Good afternoon. This is Pam Batchelor with Digital Teaching and Learning on the home base team, and I'm excited to talk to you about Canvas today. With me is one of my colleagues, Cynthia. You want to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Cynthia Sartain. I'm the North Central consultant. Glad you're here.
And of course, we have the one and only Christy with us as well, too.
Yeah, so glad to be here and excited to talk to you all today.
Christy, did you want to put up that bit.ly just for a second so we can get it down in the chat for everybody?
Yep. So there are resources linked in the presentation. I know that a lot of times it's difficult when you're watching a webinar to flip back and forth into your own Canvas instance to build along and also to access the resources that are there. But the good news is if you get this presentation, then you can access it at your leisure later, especially if you're going back and watching the recording and pausing and rewinding as you're practicing you know, how to build an assignment and use Speedgrader. So you definitely want to try to get this presentation linked down.
And it's also attached, and if you look in the handout section of the webinar, there is a PDF copy of the slide deck as well. So either way, if you want to type in the bit.ly or if you want to go to handouts.
Yes, I didn't even give you time to see the little surprise.
Little puppy, yeah, I like that. See that? I love that. That's too cute. So I'll go over some of the boring things. You do get live participation credit for joining us this afternoon, 0.1 CEU, which is equal to 1 hour of credit. You'll receive an email from me within 5 business days with your certificate, as well as a link to the recording and a copy of the slide deck. Please give me that 5 business days. It's not an automated process. I'll do everything I can to send it out on Monday, but I appreciate your patience with that. We do recommend it's for digital learning competency credit. You'll see that on the certificate. However, you need to follow your local process, and including kinds of justification or artifacts to help make sure you get the proper credit type. And then finally, this webinar is being recorded, so you will have the live recording to go back over. So that way, if you just want to relax and follow along with Christy today, and then you can use the recording to when you are implementing this on your course, and you can stop and pause and go. So, we do have a quick poll for everyone. Let me go ahead and launch that. And we just want to know, does your PSU or public school unit have access to the paid version of Canvas? And that usually means a red Canvas icon on your tray. We have a couple of districts that the icon's a different color other than red for their staff, but most of us have a red icon if you have the paid version of Canvas. So we'll give everyone just a few more seconds to respond to that poll.
If you're in Wake County, you can answer yes, even though you don't have a red icon on your NC Ed Cloud dashboard.
Yep, it's blue, but yes, yeah. All right. So we're going to go ahead and share those results, and it does look like most of us do have that paid version. So, all right.
And we bring that up just because every once in a while there'll be features that we talk about that are available for those with a paid instance versus those who are using a free for teacher account. And so you should know if you're using free for teacher that, you know, grade passback wouldn't work if we talk about that, which we will today, just a tad. Even though that's not the focus of today's meeting, we will talk about it. And so if you are not in a paid version, if you don't have that red Canvas icon on your NC Ed Cloud dashboard, when we talk about grade passback, that does not work with the free for teacher account. Sorry, I'm going. Were you gonna launch another poll or are we ready to move?
I think we're good.
Okay, cool. All right, so we have here listed for you the full webinar schedule, so you can take a look at that and look at the descriptions. We do have these monthly, so you can get that credit or get a certificate that advises or suggests credit for each webinar that you attend live. Next month, actually it's just around the corner because December being a short month with the holiday, December 5th, we have both a 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. option to talk about new quizzes. And so if you haven't yet used the new quizzes, we're going to talk about all the different question types, and some of the benefits of new quizzes, including outcomes reports and how you can align questions to your curriculum standards directly to the question, which is a little bit of a different workflow than with our classic quizzes that we currently have. So that should be a good webinar for you. Even if you're an experienced Canvas user, that should be some new information. Today, we're going to talk about, we're going to look at some example assignments. Then we're going to look at assignment settings and options. We're going to create a Google Cloud assignment because I find that sometimes people aren't aware that in Canvas you can add a Google Doc as an assignment and it creates a copy for each student right there within Canvas, and they can submit it right within Canvas, and you don't have to get a ton of emails saying that a Google Doc's been shared with you. You don't have to go back to your Google Drive folder to try to find those. It's all right there in that assignment within that Speedgrader. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at creating a group assignment, also a standards aligned rubric, and then we'll explore Speedgrader and talk about the teacher app and leave time for any Q&A. And that's a pretty aggressive agenda, so if we don't get to everything, there are resources in the slide deck for each of the things that I've mentioned. And so thinking about assignments, a lot of times, we think about assignments as only being graded activities. However, you can have assignments that are not graded. You can have assignments that are just complete incomplete. You can put them in 0 weighted categories so they're not impacting a student's grade, but they're still getting that feedback. You can have online submission in a variety of formats. You can have create assignments that are on paper or that don't have submissions. You can attach rubrics, you can assign peer reviews, and as I mentioned, group assignments. So there are so many different things you can do with assignments, including setting up a mastery path, which would allow students to have basically a tiered lesson. So based on their performance or their score, they would get a separate path for their particular readiness for that skill or standard. So, assignments are super powerful in Canvas. So I wanted just to take a few minutes and look at some example assignments. You will not have access to all of these. You may have access to them as public links, but even though they're linked here, I did that more for my benefit so that I would have them readily available. But I just wanted to show you some of the things that you can do and some of the formats. So you see this one assignment. This is from a intro to geology class, and you see that you've got a little bit of an introduction here, a YouTube video, some directions for students, showing them that they're going to do a concept map, and having all of those particular requirements here, giving them a tool that they can use or some other options, because students can demonstrate that they've mastered the concept in a variety of ways. They don't all have to turn in the exact same thing. Giving them the options of how they are going to submit that, so they could either do a website or a file upload depending on what they've used to create their concept map. Then you see that it has a rubric attached, and so there's some just basic requirements for the assignments included in the rubric, as well as an alignment to a course level outcome that would then feed a learning mastery gradebook score for the student to show you the student's progress towards mastery of that particular standard. So all of that is set up with this assignment. And just real quickly, we will talk about Speedgrader in more depth later, but when you go to Speedgrader, you would see every student and you would see their submissions. Of course, no one has submitted here. This is just an example, but you also see that rubric, and you can move that over, and you can grade straight from the rubric, and it'll give that score. And that score then goes to the grade book. And then, of course, if you're using Grade Passback, then it also goes to PowerSchool on that sync. So it's super easy to have rubrics, especially standards aligned rubrics that you're utilizing, because you would see the students' work here, and then you can grade those and that grade automatically goes to the student, to the parent. If the parent is an observer, it goes in your grade book in Canvas, and also if you've got your PowerSchool sync set up, it goes to PowerSchool. So it's super easy to do. Even if this was an on-paper assignment, you could still use Speedgrader and that easily utilize that rubric. And again, that same data would pass back to all those same places. So definitely Speedgrader is a time saver for sure for teachers. Wanted to look at this second example. This is from US History, and this is a group assignment. And the students can upload it. They can type directly into Canvas, upload again a website URL or media recording. Again, we're really looking at that UDL principle of multiple means of I lost my words, but we're looking at the students being able to demonstrate mastery and understanding in a variety of ways. So giving them lots of different options. So within this group assignment, then they have those prompts that they're selecting one. So you've got some choice embedded there. So really working with differentiation as well, not just on the products, the format of the product, but also on the particular topic. And then you see the different format that are different formats that they're able to select from. And you see, again, a standards aligned rubric, as well as just some basic project criteria. I'm going to go to Speedgrader here. When you set up a group assignment, when one student submits, and this was just something I submitted just to show some of the tools that you get in Speedgrader, so I'm going to show you those. But when you set up a standards aligned rubric, you set up a group assignment, when one student from the group submits, that submission would show for all students in the group. And when you grade that submission, you can either have that grade go to all students, or you actually can assign individual assignment scores. Again, I showed this example just because I wanted to show all of the different features that are available. So as a teacher, you have the opportunity to do all of these things in Speedgrader to give feedback directly on that work submission, all of these different tools. In addition to the rubric that you have, so you see that you have, I've already graded with this rubric. This is a sliding scale, so you see that. And then I also can add comments, including adding attachments, and I can record a comment. And I also can do speech recognition. So if I'm sitting in the car line, I can actually use speech recognition to record my feedback. And it does a pretty good job. So then I have that feedback there, and I could submit that to the students. So with Speedgrader, you've got all of those different options, just really, again, helping to give you some time back and also not having to carry a ton of papers. So it's a super useful tool, and I say probably the #1 seller for why teachers love Canvas is Speedgrader. Here's another example. So this is for a second grade assignment. One of the best things about Canvas is the ability for students to record themselves, either video or audio, directly into Canvas. And they can do that via the app if you're using an iPad or a mobile device, and also they could do it directly in the web browser. So when a student gets ready to submit an assignment, then they're able to do that, again, using a media recording tool within Canvas. And so even for your pre-readers, you could have them do something, where they're telling a story, or they're, talking about a process or describing something for you, or, whatever skill you're working on. If it's something that you can orally assess, then you could certainly have students record that, their submission. I love this activity, to choose a book and go home and read it to somebody else at home and record themselves reading that. And then again, a standards aligned rubric that can be utilized over and over again within the course. So that you're constantly monitoring that progress throughout the course. And again, those standards aligned rubric would then inform the Learning Mastery Gradebook, so you could watch that student's progress. And the fourth example, this shows one of the tools, an LTI tool that you can connect to Canvas. That's sometimes called an external tool, an external app, or sometimes you'll see it referred to as an LTI. This one happens to be curriculum pathways. And so this has been connected directly to the assignment, and the student will be able to review the lesson here and also then complete that practice directly in there. So I'm not even looking at these answers, but it's not looking too good for me right now. So let's see. Here we go. I'll actually try to make it right. So you see, as the student's doing that, then they can also just send those scores directly in. They can get a link that they could submit. They also can send an email. But this is just one of the very many tools. And we know what a high quality resource curriculum pathways is, so I really like to show that. And then finally, I wanted to show you an example of a Google Doc assignment. So again, I said that there are Google Cloud assignments where students get a copy of the actual Google Doc that you've created. And when they're ready to submit that, they actually have their very own copy, and their page looks very similar, and they just get a submit button. And then when you would go to Speedgrader, you would see their submissions loaded in Speedgrader, just like we did when I showed you that certificate example, and you would be able to grade that. Now, for this particular one, I didn't attach a rubric, but you could have also had a rubric there. So you could simply enter a score, or if you had a rubric, then you would see that in Speedgrader as well. So lots of different options for creating assignments. So, as I mentioned, there are lots of different types: online, on paper, no submission, Google Docs, group activities, ungraded, peer reviews, mastery paths. And so we're going to look at setting up an assignment together. And whenever you want to come back, and if you need additional help later on, I linked all of the assignment guides here for you. And so they are linked directly in the slide deck, but also at any point in time that you're ever in Canvas, you also can go over to help, and you can search the Canvas guides, and you can drill down to find the guides that you need. So you would be an instructor, and you would go to finding, like in this particular case, assignments, and it would take you there as well. I'm going to pause for just a second. Pam, are there any questions?
James had a good question. He brought up file size limitations for submissions for students of assignments.
That's not something we typically run into. There are limits, especially in terms of media. There are some limits. One way to get around that, definitely, is to, if it's going to be a large, like a video, then you can have the students put that into YouTube, put it into Google Drive, put it somewhere where they're actually sharing the link in Canvas instead of the actual file itself.
I don't think I've ever run into an issue with the built-in recorder. Like if they were going to use the built-in recorder to like videotape themselves for talking for like in a foreign language or playing an instrument. I don't think I've ever seen a limit on that. Do you? Have you?
I have not. I mean, it probably would stop recording at that point, you know, prior to, but I have never run into that. So there's a guide, and if I'm not able to find it, because I don't want to just keep poking around and looking for it, but there is a guide that tells you what those limitations are, and perhaps we can send that out in the follow-up with the recording. Is that okay, Pam?
That sounds great.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll send that out later then, just so I don't waste the time on the webinar trying to just find it myself. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go into create a new course. Well, let me go from my dashboard. Many of you will have the option from your course dashboard to create a course yourself. And if you do, it's a great opportunity to create sandboxes where you can play. If you do not have that ability, then you normally have someone in your district that would create one for you. And so I know in my school district, I created them. So it really just depends on, what those decisions have been in your individual school district or school if you're at a charter school. But you should be able to either create a course to play in as a sandbox, or maybe you already have one, or someone in your district or school can probably create one, or can create one for you. So I always build things from modules. Those of you who've been on my previous webinars know that. So I'm just going to say that this is a Unit 1 module. And the modules page is basically like your binder. So if you had all of your materials and course resources in paper format, then that's similar to like what this modules page is. Like you would put them all in a binder. And each individual module is like a tab. So I've just created my Unit 1 tab for my binder. And just to show you what it starts looking at, like I'll go ahead and add a second module. So you see that as I add second modules, I've got, additional tabs of my binder basically, or file folders in my file cabinets. But I'm going to go up to Unit 1 and I'm going to add an assignment. So even though you can add things from the sidebar, I always build my content in modules, because for students, that's one of the biggest requests I get as I talk to students across the state. They want some standardization of Canvas courses so they know where to find things. They will say, can you make all my teachers use Canvas the same way? And certainly we don't want to make everybody, use Canvas the same way, but we can talk about some best practices. And so best practices would be to build content in modules and have everything flow nicely. So whether you're building it by week, by day, by unit, by topic, but having all the resources that align to that particular organization strategy, having them all grouped together. So in this case, I'm going to have Unit 1, and I'm going to create an assignment. Now, you can drop this box down to add other types of things. Like last time we talked about pages. We're going to talk about quizzes next time. But we're going to talk about new quizzes, which is different. But we're going to add an assignment today. And so when I drop it down to assignment, I'm going to hit New Assignment, and I am going to then just say we're going to have a bell ringer. Okay, so assignment name, and I'm going to add that item. And again, I know it's tough to follow along when you maybe not have two screens, and it kind of goes a little fast on the webinar, but hopefully by going back to watching the recording, you'll be able to pause and rewind and do this with ease. So that's just added basically that placeholder within my module for the bell ringer. I actually need to open that up in order to edit it and add content. So I'm going to edit my assignment. And here I have, this is called the Rich Content Editor. And the Rich Content Editor is basically like any other Word, Word, Google Doc, any other type of text-based resource where you're typing text. You normally have some kind of toolbar that's very similar to this. And so this allows you to format your text in a variety of ways, add in videos, add in links, add in images, so you can really make that content be whatever it is. We always want to give good directions to students. I'm just, for the sake of time, going to pretend like I'm giving them great direction, maybe even giving them a resource. So if I had a YouTube video on, let's do quadratic equation. If I had a YouTube video that I wanted to have my students view before they get through the bell ringer question, then I could put that there. I could even make it a little smaller if I wanted it to be smaller. Then I could embed that video right there. So I've given them all of the directions here that they need. I've given them a resource that they can look back to if needed, and then I can start thinking about those assignment settings. And so, of course, I want to know how many points my assignment is worth. I can add that in. If you have assignment categories, and this is very important because if you're syncing from Power Teacher Pro, then you certainly would have needed to set up your Power Teacher Pro categories, and that's going to be in a future webinar. But when we talk about that, like this is what place where you would see different assignment groups. If you weight your assignment categories, like if you have a particular weight for quizzes and homework and major projects, or if you have a major and minor category, that's where you would see those assignment groups there to select from. In this course, I just created it, and so I haven't set up any groups. So I'm just going to leave it. I could decide to change my grade to percentage. I could do it as complete, incomplete. I could leave it as points. I could do it as letter grade. Now, if you have letter grade, then you have to make sure that you have also utilized your school scale. So if you're on a 10-point scale, then you need to make sure that that is set up correctly, and that's done in your setting. Also, you could do a GPA scale or not graded. So I'm going to leave this as points. Now, not graded is a great way for students to submit things that are more formative. You know, you don't want them to go into the grade book. You just want to see how they do. If you also can have a graded assignment, but put it in an assignment group that's not weighted, that has 0% weight, and that also would essentially give them a grade, but not count towards their final grade. So that's another way to get more formative data from students. Also, you have the option here, do not count this assignment towards final grade. So that's another option. When you look at submission type, you could say this is just something I want them to do. I'm leaving it as an assignment because sometimes students have to know that it's an assignment to know that they have to do it. So they see it in their to-do list, they see it on their dashboard, they see it, you know, in the app for notifications, they see it on the calendar, they see it all those places. So you want it to be an assignment, but it could be that they are, you know, reading, you know, particular chapters. So there's no submission there, but you wanted them to know that is an assignment for maybe that night's homework. So you could have no submission. You also could have it be online, which we'll skip back to in just a second. On paper, obviously, as something super, you know, you want to collect it on paper, but you're going to enter the grades in Canvas. I already showed you Speedgrader, super easy to have that standards aligned rubric right there for things even that you're grading on paper. Maybe it's something that you are having, it'd be no submission because maybe it's a skill that you are assessing. I know, like, if you're perhaps JROTC, there are a lot of skills that those instructors assess for that are demonstrated. If you're working with kindergarten, first grade students, there's lots of skills that they are demonstrating. So there's no actual submission, but you could still use a standards aligned rubric for you to continue to monitor that progress right within Speedgrader, and showed you how easy that is already. So, but it could be on paper. External tool, this is where you get the option to do things, and mine's going to look really crazy. I have lots of things. You probably don't have this many, but this is where you get the option to do things like Google Docs cloud assignments, which we're going to go back and do together later. But I want to just show you that's what the external tool means, and you will have different ones depending on what your district has connected to your Canvas account. Also, you as a teacher can connect some external tools to your account. In most cases, there are some districts that limit those, but most districts and schools have that open. But if you decide to do online, then you have also a variety of options, and you can allow students as many options as possible, right? So if you want students to be able to demonstrate mastery in a variety of different formats, you're giving them some choice about the way that they do that. That I often give them lots of choices here. And it's not just, even if I don't have like lots of choices in terms of the actual product itself, even if I have more defined terms for what I want the product to look like, I might not know what device the student is using. And depending on the device that's accessible to them at home, especially if this is a homework assignment or something they're going to work on out of class, then it may be super important to give them lots of options. They may be using something that has Microsoft Word or, you know, Keynote or something where they're going to actually have a file. They may only have web resources where they're having to do Google Docs. They may, you know, again, it may be that you have students who could really demonstrate their understanding via a voice or video recording. So you have all of these different options available. Text entry allows them to type directly into Canvas. So I usually give my kids all of the different types. But of course, if I was requiring a very specific assignment submission, then I wouldn't. But you know, for most assignments, then I give them lots of options. This is where we set up group assignments. and we're going to go back and do this later, but you see that you have additional options once you make that selection. We can do peer reviews. This isn't something we're going to go to in detail today, but you can assign peer reviews. So you can manually assign students to peer review, and if they peer review, they use the same rubric that you've created for you to use. So that you can set up to say you have to do 2 peer reviews, and you can manually assign those if you have partners or people that you know you're trying to pair for strengths, perhaps. Or you can also have it just automatically assign peer reviews. So basically, as students submit, then they get that peer review assignment. And you can allow those peer reviews to be anonymous if you like, so that they really feel comfortable giving that feedback to their classmates. Additionally, you can either assign assignments to everyone, or you can assign it to individual students or sections. Now, I just created this sandbox. I don't have any students in this course, so I can't show you, but generally I would be able just to type the student's name and it would show. Also, if there were different sections. So if I had my first period, second period, and third period all in the same course, then I could just assign something just to that section. And a lot of teachers ask about that because we know we have pep rallies and assemblies and all kinds of things that get our classes out of sync. And so sometimes you have to have separate due dates for those separate sections. So you can do that here. Obviously, you can set your due date, including the time. And you can also make things, an available from, a time you're going to have it open up, and if you want to, an until. Personally, I don't do the until because of students who might be absent. That becomes problematic and difficult to manage from an instructor's point of view, in my opinion. However, you may choose to use that, and that's fine. Another thing that I want to mention is a lot of teachers I find have, especially once they start using Canvas, they will extend due dates to be Saturday or Sunday to give students a little extra time. So if you're looking, a student has all of these tools within Canvas to help them really be responsible and manage their workload. So if they're able, a lot of our kids have lots of extracurricular activities. And so if they know that they've got 3 ball games that week and they have, 5 assignments that are due, they know what all has to be done and when it has to be due. So a lot of teachers I find do extend due dates to Saturday or Sunday, allowing students some extra time to work on those things. So that's something you can easily do here. And if they don't get it in by Saturday or Sunday, it would show you it was late. So you have all of these different options when you're creating an assignment. You also could even, I didn't even mention this, you could link in other things. So if you had a page or discussion or something in the course already, you could link it there. You could look for files here to link in. You could look for images here to link in. You also can do images here where you can do an image by URL. You can do one that you already have in a Canvas course, or you can actually just search for a Flickr image. Like if I wanted to have an image just to make my assignment look a little better, or sometimes it actually is something that, is going to be helpful for the student in the completion of the assignment, then I can do that. It's always going to ask us to have some type of alt text so that those students that are visually impaired and have screen readers, when that screen reader is trying to read over that image, it gives the students a description. And you would, graph to show whatever you would want it to say. And then you can even change that size here. So I can add in a picture there if I needed to. Obviously, that's not good formatting, but so you have all of these options when you're creating the assignment, and then we could just save it. Now, one thing I want to mention is that I have not published that. I just hit save. So if you go back to my home page, this course is not yet published. So even if I had students in it, so if you're connected to PowerSchool, your courses are created with your students already in them. Until you publish that course, the students can't see the course. Okay, so I'm going to publish it. And then once I publish it, the students still can't see any of this content because these modules aren't published and this assignment isn't published. So I could publish the module, and that automatically published the assignment, but I could even unpublish the assignment. So I can control when students see things. We also, and we talked about this previously, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, But with your modules, you also have options of adding requirements, making students move sequentially, scoring at least a specific score on something before they move ahead. If there were prerequisites, this is the first module, first activity, so I don't have prerequisites here, but I could have prerequisites also. I'm just going to cancel that. And so now from a student's perspective, I'm going to add a student in here just so we have an example. I'm going to pretend to be Christy testing Canvas, my fake user that I use a lot. So now from my student's perspective, I can go in and I can see that assignment, and then I get an option to submit the assignment. I was given all of these different ways to submit my assignment because remember, I selected everything. So if I did file upload, I could upload that file. If I did text entry, then I can type right here and submit it. I could add a website URL. This is the record upload media, as I was talking about with those students, especially your pre-readers. You can, oh y'all, and I'm not looking very hot this afternoon, so I'm gonna stop that. But you can see that they can easily record themselves. There's audio recording too. I have Studio, which is also a video platform that not all of you had because that's a separate paid service. And then sometimes your Google and other external tools will show up there as well. So it just depends on how many you have added into your instance. You may not have any, you may have some. But that's what it looks like from a student perspective. I'll drop out of there. Also, in your courses, you have in your settings page, you have a student view, so you can always just test what it looks like from a student view by going there. And that's really helpful so that you remember to publish all those things. So many of us have been using Canvas for a long time and we still forget to publish things. So that's really helpful there. So I'm going to jump out of there and I'm going to pause again for a minute. And I apologize. Yeah, they are pressure washing my house outside. And even though I have my headphones on, I'm sure that you hear a little bit of that background. So I do apologize for that. But glad to know my house is being pressure washed though. But I want to go back here to our agenda. Are there any questions, Pam?
All right. So now would be a good time to, we've had a few questions come in, Christy.
Yeah.
So we've had a question come in about wanting to add a file to an assignment as like a reference document. So I didn't know if you could show real quick how maybe they could do that to when they edit an assignment.
Yeah. Let me get out of here. Okay, so when I create an assignment, I'm going to say, so if I have a file here, then I would just go to Files and upload a new file, choose a file. We find something. I'm going to use this. And then it would put that file there. Again, you know, I can just go through and make all my selections, give it a due date. And I chose to save and publish it that time. And now the students can either click on it to download it, or they can do use the little eyeglass, the magnifying glass, and it will load that file there. Okay. Is there another question?
Yeah, the other question is, I don't know if you want to go over showing how to add tools to your course. So if you, someone noticed you had Flipgrid, and wanted to know how you got that there on the side of your course.
So some districts do limit the tools that you're able to add. Some districts and schools. So I'm just going to throw that disclaimer out there. But the Edu App Center is a place where you can find directions and how to for all of the tools that are available to be added into Canvas. And so if you were specifically looking for Flipgrid, then you would see the directions for how to link your accounts. So obviously, you know, for all of these things, you're going to have a Flipgrid account first. And then from Flipgrid is where you generate a key and secret. I'm going to show you where you put that, but you have to follow these directions. And generally that includes creating an account with that tool. And then within that particular console of that tool, then that's when you are able to generate your key and secret. Here's my Flipgrid key and secret that I generated August 5th. So I'm going to go back to Edu App Center again, but I would just follow those, and all of these are unique for each user. So yours, not that you want to copy mine down right now, that long number, but it would be unique for you. Or if your district has added it in, then it would be unique at the district level. So you've got all of these directions here that you follow, but basically what it entails is going into your course settings, and then you go to apps. You can look for apps here too, but I find that the documentation in the Edu App Center is way better than the documentation that you get when you just click on an app here. Like I could search for Flipgrid here, and it would show me, and this one looks to be pretty good. Sometimes the directions aren't as extensive as what they are in the Edu App Center, but these look to be pretty good. But generally speaking, like if I went to add Flipgrid, it's going to ask me for the consumer key and shared secret. Or sometimes these directions will tell you to go into adding it by going to view app configurations, add an app, and then it'll tell you. That's what these directions would be telling you. Would tell you exactly how to do it. Like there's a configuration URL here, so I would be saying I was going to add it by URL, and it would, you know, name it this key and secret, and then there's that configuration URL I would paste there. So those directions, again, for pretty much, or for every app that you would want to add, are available in the Edu App Center. And the only one that's not there that you might see sometimes is SchoolNet, and that's because that's added at the district level for sure. And we have directions for your district level admin to add SchoolNet in if they have not yet done that. That's how.
Great. Thank you, Christy.
Yeah. Any other questions?
That's it so far.
Okay, great. Well, let's create an assignment. Let's do a Frayer. I showed you an example one earlier, but I'll show you how to do it. So we're going to create an assignment, and I'm going to edit that. And then I'm going to go in and add this, like this is a template assignment. I want it to be, or I'm going to go do these selections first. I'm going to have it be to do everyone, have it do next week. And then I'm going to have it be an external tool. And with that external tool, I'm going to find it, and I'm going to do Google Cloud Doc assignment, or Google Doc Cloud assignment, sorry. Then I'm just going to search my where it went. Sorry, my search is being really slow. Okay. I'm just going to retrieve that and select. And then when I hit save, it then puts my Google Doc directly in here. And for every student, then they're able to when this, it shows you, it creates a copy of this for every student already. And they can submit it here, and when they submit it, it will show for Speedgrader for you. So they don't have to share it with you. You don't have to worry about changing those sharing settings. So this is how you create a Google Cloud assignment so that each student gets their own copy of this document. Also, let's just say that this was a group assignment. So we wanted the students to work in groups to complete those prayers. Then we could go in and we could say that this is going to be, sorry, let's do a separate one. Let's do group project here. All right, so I'm going to edit. I'm going to give the directions, tell the students to work on creating a video or a infographic or something that describes the process. I'm going to have point values assigned to it again. This particular case, I'm going to do online submission, giving them lots of different options. And then I want it to be a group assignment. So if I already had groups, then I would be able to select them. I have not set up any groups in this course, so I'm going to say group project 1. This is the group set name. I can either allow self sign up, and if I do that, I can require group members to be in the same section, which means they're in the same physical class in your class, or I could split them into so many equal groups. So if I had, 20 students, well, it's a small class, but if I had 20 students and I wanted groups of 4, then I could have 5 equal groups. I could require them again to be in the same section. Or I could also create those groups manually, whatever way you want to. And even if you have it automatically create the groups, you can, as a teacher, move students if you need to, because there's sometimes those kids that you don't always want to work together. You could absolutely let it automatically split the kids, and then you could just manually move the 1 or 2 that you needed to. You also could have it automatically assign a group leader. You could have a random student or set the first student, whatever you wanted to do, and save. So that gives you that group project. And then this is important because a lot of people miss this box. If you wanted students to get individual grades, so like, I don't know how you work your group projects, but how I worked mine in the classroom was I basically had for every group project, the students ended up with 3 scores. So I would have them self-assess and give themselves a score. I would have each group member give each student a score. And then I gave the group project a score. And then I would look at those 3 scores and I would determine what each individual student actual grade was based on their contribution, both self-reported and from their peers. And so that's how I graded group work. That's something that you could do here. You can assign grades to each student individually. Or if you're giving 1 grade for the project to each group member, the same grade, then you do not select that. But when you're ready to set that up, then you just go ahead and set your due date. And again, you would save and publish. And it would automatically, because I had it set to automatically create my group, it would automatically create those groups for me. Any questions about those?
No, we're good.
Okay. All right, so let's do a standards aligned rubric. So for anything that we're doing in our class, we know we want to have, we want to make sure that we're, connected to our core standards. So, even if you're not doing standards-based grading, which I know, some people are, but fewer are not, or more are not than are, you still want to make sure you're doing standards aligned instruction. You've got to make sure the students are mastering that content. So you can create standards aligned rubrics just as, for your information, to inform your instruction, to inform your work with each student individually. So within each course, you have the opportunity to go to outcomes. And if you don't have any outcomes here yet, then you can find outcomes. And you may have different levels of folders. It depends on how your account admin added in your standards. Mine, I have a couple different layers, but I'm going to go into my account standards, and this is where I'm going to find my North Carolina standards. Now, my North Carolina or we were creating CTE. We're starting to try to create the CTE standards. My North Carolina essential standards are here. My math standards are here, and these were updated in 2017. And my ELA standards are here. Sometimes you're going to see your ELA and math standards under a folder called Standard Course of Study. Again, it just depends on how your account admin has imported those standards. But you could have, a grade 2, and you could have language, basically I'm going to import the whole grade level into my course for everything I need. But once you start looking for standards, you would be able to drill down and see that all of them, I just wanted to show you, all of the standards are already loaded in here, and they look like, keep going, this. Okay, so the standards are in there. It has the description. It's already automatically set up with these labels: exceeds, meets, and does not meet expectations. It's already set up these point values. It's set up to calculate the highest score in terms of Learning Mastery Gradebook. You can't change these because these are imported. Now, what you could do is create your own outcomes if you did not like this. And I do have teachers that will just basically copy and paste the standard and create their own because they want a different scale or they want a different calculation method. But easiest thing to do is to find your course standards. So if I was teaching a second grade ELA course, then I'm just going to import this whole folder into my course. So you don't want all of the North Carolina standards in your course. You just want the ones that are pertinent to your class. All right, so now I have all of those grade 2 ELA standards in my class. Because I assess for the same thing multiple times, then I'm going to go in and I'm going to create rubrics that I'm going to use over and over and over, right? So I'm going to say language, right? And we're just going to go there, and I'm going to find an outcome. And so, and I'm not a second grade ELA teacher. I should have done something that I was more familiar with. I apologize, but I'm just going to show you some examples. So I see I've got a couple of the outcomes there. So I'm going to add those outcomes. I'm just going to delete this one. This was just in there for me to modify originally. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to find another outcome. So let's say that every time we're working with adjectives, I want to assess my students on these 2 standards. Then I've got my rubric. I'm going to go ahead and create that rubric. Now I can use this rubric over and over again. So if I were on a particular assignment, let's just say I was on this assignment, and that rubric, I was going to use it to assess. Actually, let me give a different assignment just because it's a little different workflow with that Google LTI. All right, so for here, I'm going to add a rubric, and I can actually go find the course rubric that is already aligned to, right, I'm on this class. I can find that course, and notice I can find rubrics from any of my classes. Like I typically demo from Spanish because that's what I did teach. So I show that in my Spanish class, I set up listening rubrics because all of these standards align to listening activities. I set up reading comprehension. So every time I do a listening activity, I can use that rubric to assess my students on their listening skills. Every time I do reading comprehension, I can assess my students on their reading comprehension skills. In this particular case, I'm going to show you the one we just created. So I'm going to say the language and adjectives. I apologize, I need to expand that. I'm going to use this rubric, and now it's added this rubric to my assignment. I do need to point out that I would need to go to edit that, and I would decide if I'm going to use free-form comments assessing students. If I want it to be a rubric without points, I could do that, and it would just show them those labels. I could choose not to post these outcome results to Learning Mastery Gradebook. So if this were a pre-assessment and I'm just gauging where students are, I might do that because I don't want it to really be informing their grade. I could use it for grading, or I could hide the score. So in this case, I'm going to use it for grading and update that rubric. And now again, every time students would turn in that activity, then I would be able to go to Speedgrader. I would see their activity, their submission here, and I would be able to use that rubric to grade it and it would inform the Learning Mastery gradebook as well as the overall gradebook, because I said to use it for assignment grading. Sorry, I was hitting submit instead of save. So I'm going to show you the gradebook real quickly, and I know we're almost out of time, so I just want to show you this. And I have it set to the old gradebook. You all probably have the new gradebook already. So let me go change that. So that it looks like what yours is going to look like. So I've got my gradebook. You see my student, I just graded that activity. I can switch that to the Learning Mastery gradebook, and I can hide outcomes with no results, but then I see that my student scored 5 out of 3, so it has at mastery for this particular outcome, and 3 out of 3 at mastery for this particular outcome based on that assessment. And it's going to report the highest because that was the way that was set up. So super easy to set up standards aligned rubrics in order to continue to monitor progress for your students over the course. We talked about Speedgrader. We also have talked about, we didn't talk about the teacher app yet, but I want to just stop for questions. I do want to just say, if you haven't yet checked out the teacher app, I advise you to do so. It's amazing. You are able to grade super quickly on the fly. Elizabeth Joyce, that does all the MCAT online courses, but she has, you know, hundreds and hundreds of students at a time, and she just does it. I mean, there's no way possible she could even function without the Speedgrader app on her iPhone. So I just really encourage you to check out the teacher app, but specifically the Speedgrader functionality. So I'm going to stop for any additional questions before we wrap up.
So far, we don't have any, but we'll give folks just another few seconds to get some typing in.
Okay.
Okay, that's about as long as my wait time is right now.
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock. I know everybody's ready to go home or to get started on your evening. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to be with us today, and you know, definitely you know, take advantage of the opportunity to utilize the recording and the slide deck to help you and your colleagues you know, think about different ways that you can use assignments that possibly you haven't been doing already.
Yes, we are just so grateful for you guys taking an hour out of your day to join us to learn more about Canvas. And I will be in touch soon with that email with your certificate, link to the recording, and a copy of the slide deck.
All right. Thank you.
Cynthia, for joining us too.
Yeah.
All right, y'all have a wonderful evening.